Howdy, y'all. Happy Tuesday. Today we're going to be talking about international finance, some trade, Federal Reserve, interest rates, and the petrodollar. So if that doesn't sound exciting, you're probably a normal human being. I'm going to preface this by saying I don't have a PhD from anywhere. There's no piece of paper wrapped up in mahogany on my wall anywhere hanging. Okay, so I don't know what I'm talking about compared to what the experts would say. So take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. This is just for understanding, and doomsday predictions, well, who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But this is just for information. So, just yesterday, Saudi Arabia came out and they said they're not going to renew a deal with the United States to use the US dollar as the petrodollar. So, what is a petrodollar? All it really means is that we use our US reserve currency, that's been the world's reserve currency for a long time, and that's the main resource that we use as a country to purchase foreign nations' oil. So if we're importing oil, or Saudi Arabia, for example, is exporting oil, we've been paying for that oil using the US dollar. Now the reason for this for the longest time is America's been known as like the leader when it comes to investments. So if you want to buy assets like stocks, bonds, treasuries, anything like that, even assets like real estate, all that, you'd want US dollars. Well, now, because of the BRICS countries and their formation within this M-bridge system, which has Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, India, South Africa, and a couple others, there isn't as much use for the US dollar, which, to some they'd be like, oh, well, why does it matter? Money in, money out, who really gives a fuck? Well, the truth of the matter is that when we switch entirely to this new CBDC system that they want, where do all those dollars go? Because currently, there isn't exactly a whole lot of paper in all these different countries. Everything's on a ledger, it's on a screen. So I just wanted to start off by saying this is more than oil right now. This is about the health of the US dollar, a currency, and its survival. And the reason for this is we already have high interest rates in the United States. The US has a high amount of debt, 34 trillion, something around there. And the only way we can start to deal with this problem is to fix our economy and somehow lower these interest rates as well and start paying off some of this debt. Because the higher the interest rate is, that means the government, which already doesn't have money, has to pay out higher amounts of interest to all the people that it loans money to. And as long as this interest rate is pumped up, they are paying more money out to anyone that loans us money. So we need to get this thing down so we can deal with the fucking problem. So where does the petrodollar come into all of this? Well, if we don't need a global reserve currency, the US dollar, anymore, let's just say these other countries aren't going to be holding our treasury bonds. What's a treasury bond? Well, a treasury bond is kind of like the US government saying, hey, I need money, so give me $1 trillion and I'll give you 5% on that over 20, 30 years, and then at maturity, I'll give you back your money, right? Assuming that the clown show continues, we should be able to print all that money again by then and give it back. And then it all goes back to normal. However, what happens if there's a sudden collapse in the amount of need for the US dollar? And there are other factors that go into it, such as the smoke and mirrors currently going on with the Trump situation. Now, I don't want to get political, that's not the point of this channel, but it's smoke and mirrors. You see, if you turned on the news yesterday, all you would have heard about is probably all the Trump rallies, rah, 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 all this bullshit. And you wouldn't have heard that just a couple days prior, Biden had made some dealings to get some missiles into Ukraine pointing themselves at Russia. These are NATO missiles in a country next to Russia. Something that Russia said, NATO, do not do this, okay? So, I want to be very clear. You have the UAE, United Emirates, saying, hey, reserve currency dollar, not needed anymore for the petro, all right? Oil, we're going to use the renminbi. And then you also have missiles showing up on the doorstep of Russia, which could prompt a sort of Cold War-esque World War III situation. In which case, who do you think they're going to attack? And how do you think they're going to attack them? I want you to genuinely think about this. If you were to get into a scuffle with a country, what's one of the best ways to completely blow out the knees of the other country? Well, it's to destroy their currency. So what could happen in the near future after this move by the UAE is that Russia, China, United Emirates, South Africa, India could start offloading, I don't even want to know how much, billions, trillions of US Treasury bonds. They're saying, hey, I want my money back. I don't want that interest rate anymore. I want my money back. And that will cause a massive amount of currency shortage within the US because we have bills to pay and we would have to print more money to either supplement and pay those bills, or we have to raise interest rates. The reason we'd have to raise interest rates is because that's the premium that people are looking for in order to give the money over to the government. You know, if they really need money and it's at a 5% treasury bond rate right now, I would be like, you know what, I'd rather hold on to my $10,000, but they're like, whoa, we really need that money. What if we do it for 7? What if we do it for 8? And it raises the treasury bond rate. Now, the interest on the T-bills would increase. What impact would that have on the federal funds rate? It would also increase. And as that federal funds rate increases, that means all that money that's printed by the government, well, the Federal Reserve isn't even part of the government, it's part of the Rothschild Bank, but we're not getting into central banking. Do that one probably next week. Basically, the interest rate of the federal funds would increase, which means the price of all debt, the cost of all debt, would increase. What would this hit? So, banks, the interest rate on all personal loans, any type of loan that a bank sends out has to increase because where do the banks get their money? The Federal Reserve. So if the Federal Reserve increases their rate, the banks are going to have to increase their rate because you know who ends up paying for all cost increases? The customer. And we are the customer. So, loans interest rates would increase. Mortgage interest rates would increase. The price of imports most likely will also increase. We get into a Cold War scenario, you best believe it's going to get more expensive to buy goods from other countries. Where do we get most of our shit? China. China's one of the BRICS countries. Okay? Insurance. Anything you could possibly think of that has an interest rate attached to it may possibly go up. Okay? And before, Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed, was saying there are a couple triggers that could have the American people see lower interest rates, a way that we could cut the federal funds rate. And this would have been a stock market crash, so stocks starting to go down. I don't know if you've seen, they're near the top still. Jobs market, I don't know, man. Not only does the CPI data for the inflation not look too bad unless you actually read it, it's terrible. But the jobs market, they're not reporting the terribleness that is the jobs market. Let me just give you a very brief explanation. Long-term jobs that have benefits and come with insurance and all that good stuff, somewhere where you're going to want to stay for a long time and maybe retire at, those are down. Short-term jobs, however, are up, and government jobs are up. So they're supplementing the jobs report with jobs that are not actually good jobs, for the American people long term. So, that being said, the report doesn't look too bad, which means they're not lowering those fucking rates. And then finally, a housing crisis. We're not in one yet. So, not to be scary, but what we got here is a situation where we as a country essentially could be economically nuked any minute by the sale of trillions of Treasury bonds, which in turn would cause a complete currency collapse, unlike anything we've ever seen. This shit could make 2008 look like a Tuesday afternoon. So, just wanted it to be a little informational, don't want to scare people, but it is important to understand that everything has an impact, and while on the surface we may just say, oh, well, they're just going to use a different currency to purchase oil, you have to understand that that purchasing of oil in a different currency may devalue the necessity for a reserve currency such as the US dollar, and the offloading of the treasury bills of an entire country can cause its economic collapse. And Americans are already struggling as is. So if magically out of nowhere, our currency has something like this happen where we're not lowering the rates, all right? Interest rates are staying high. People are already in debt. They can't pay more. If they refinance, they're hoping that it's going lower, not higher. So this is all going to lead to auto loan issues, housing crisis, job loss, inflation most likely still going up higher, because as you have jobs that are lost, a part of inflation is things cost more, your dollar doesn't go as far. What happens when the labor, because people are losing their jobs, now just got a little bit more expensive? You can't supply as much, right? You have X amount of labor that can make X amount of product. So if the labor starts getting diminished, you can make less product, which means the product goes up in price. So Americans most likely are going to see higher prices at the pump, higher prices in the store, higher prices on, well, not higher prices, but higher interest rates for any type of personal loan, student loan, car loan, insurance premiums, housing mortgage interest rates. Pretty much across the fucking board, things are going to get more expensive. It's going to be hyperinflation like we've never seen. And there may be a couple ways to fix this, but none of them are going to be a soft landing. I think the only way that there would ever be a soft landing is if you had somebody in office last year, the year before, or honestly the last 20 years, that had the spine to stand up against the central banks and say, hey, fuck you. Stop doing what you're doing. Usury systems are wrong. Having high interest rates on everything is wrong. You are a central bank. You are not the government, and yet you are part of all the governments around the world. Isn't that right? So, when you are that central bank, do you even have any money, or are you just printing it and then giving it out and collecting free money, fake money? Because is it really deserved interest? Imagine you're paying 5% and you loan somebody $100,000. That person has to come up with $5,000. That's coming from their income, so that's real fucking money. But the $100,000 I gave them, I can print. So it doesn't mean anything to me. That currency that I'm loaning out has no value, it's just paper. However, I am stealing real value from the people. So hopefully shit does not completely hit the fan. Hopefully all Americans are safe. But the last thing I want to say, words of wisdom, guys, hold on to your money. If the stock market starts to collapse, do not try and run, okay? It will most likely still recover. As long as you're holding the asset, you have a quantity of units, which means, yes, it may fluctuate in price, but you will not lose your money until you sell. And the same thing goes with new loans that you go out to get. If you don't need to get them, if you can find a cheaper alternative, do that. This could turn into a depression instead of a recession. This could be worse than the Great Depression, okay? The economic factors at play here, it's like 1989 combined with 1929 and 2008. I mean, we're having a jobs crisis, a financial reserve currency crisis, we're having an inflation crisis, we're gonna have oil issues, all coupled in with housing. I mean, this is really fucked. This is really sticky, and it's crazy to me that I've been online and I can't find anyone really that's discussing the possible potential consequences of all of our decisions. It's almost like they're all in cahoots on what's going on. So I'm a little confused. Hopefully somebody can let me know what they think, or if they just think I'm fucking crazy. But yeah, no, if I'm right, I'm gonna go to Harvard and get an honorary PhD from you cocksuckers, because I'm not gonna pay you 80 grand to get a piece of paper. But hey, whatever. Love you guys. It's Tuesday. Stay safe. It's sunny out. Enjoy life.